I have an incredible show for you today. I am privileged to have one of the rare appearances of General Michael Flynn, and we are going to be going over what is going on in the United States. Specifically, if you are a conservative, maybe even a moderate, and you love this country, then you know that we are being sold a bill of goods that is complete and total bullcrap. And so, General Michael Flynn, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Appreciate it, Stephen, and thanks to you for all that you do and your voice out there and helping your audience and this country understand just how difficult it is that we are, this sort of historic period of time that we're experiencing, and we really have to get more people to understand just how much sacrifice is ahead.
Yeah. So you served under President Trump until your name and career got dragged through the mud in the now exposed Russiagate hoax. Have you come to any conclusions on why your name specifically was targeted so heavily by former President Barack Obama and those that wish to destroy you and your career?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this goes back to when I served in not only in the at the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence level, where I was one of the assistant directors of national intelligence, appointed by Obama, by the way, and confirmed by the full Senate, as well as my time as the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, where I spent 2 years, another appointment by Barack Obama, and another full Senate confirmation. During those days, I was questioning, because that's my nature. I mean, that's, you don't get to the level that I rose to in the military for sure, nor in the heights of politics in this country as a national security advisor, without having an understanding and without being able to do your job effectively, right? You don't just get fairy dust sprinkled on you and poof, you're a general or you're a national security advisor. You got to earn your spurs, so to speak. So I was asking a lot of questions, and I dug into a lot of things, and I really did understand the roles and responsibilities, the organizations, and the bureaucracy of specifically of our intelligence community, but also the entire defense, military industrial complex, if you will. And I was doing things while I was at the Director of National Intelligence level, where I was questioning some of the things that the CIA was involved in, because we were above them, and I was in a job that had the responsibility to do that. And then when I went into DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, I actually started to do an audit of not only programs but of budgets. And and our organization was let's just say about a $10 billion budget. It was a significant budget, almost somewhere between, let's just say, 17 and 22,000 people on a given day. So that's a large organization. So I started to dig into that. And then when all of a sudden now I'm running in the world of politics, and I'm not helping out Hillary Clinton, right? I'm helping out a guy named Donald Trump. And I was a registered Democrat too. Not a registered Democrat today, but at the time I was a Democrat, which politics really didn't mean all that much to me in uniform, because you serve the commander in chief, you serve the Constitution, and so I never really worried about being a Democrat or Republican. I worried about doing my job. But when I got into it with Donald Trump, and we got him elected in 2016, then I really started to dig in after he selected me to be his national security advisor. And I was honored and privileged to hold that job. And there's been all kinds of crazy rumors, Stephen, out there on the internet about all kinds of just all the weird stuff. So let's keep all that weird stuff out, because it's exactly what it is. It's weird, and it's a complete waste of time. So while I am now in the job of going into the national security advisor position, I start to ask really detailed questions about specific programs that the United States intelligence community, diplomatic community, and Department of Defense, primarily those three, have been involved in for decades. And I was aware of the majority of them, because as the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, you're privy to a lot of quote unquote secrets and a lot of programs. Not all, but a lot. And so I started to dig into those, and it, you know who it affects, Stephen? It doesn't just affect the left. It doesn't just affect the CIA or the Department of Defense. It affects the entire uniparty in Washington, D.C. So my now going into the White House as the National Security Advisor with a duly elected President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, he is serving because the judgment of America says, we trust you to do this. He picks me because of, the judgment that he has to be able to pick somebody who was ready to do a very effective job. And now the uniparty begins to close in. So a lot of people will only blame Obama, which Obama had a lot to do with it. Very famous meeting on 5 January 2017. And for your audience that wants to do research, go back and look at what happened on 5 January 2017 in the White House. Very, very famous meeting. You can go back and look at the filings that we filed. You can go back and look at the evidence that we discovered. So all that said, the bottom line of this was that you're looking at and speaking to a guy who, when we use the phrase knows where the body's buried, that's a metaphor for understanding how the military-industrial complex is organized, how it operates, how the censorship, what I call the security state complex, that's part of that, how it operates, how it functions, and where there are the touch points to shut these things down. I always tell people, Stephen, that had I stayed in that job, I mean, literally only another few more weeks, maybe another month, there would have been no Mueller investigation. Think about that. So no Russiagate, no ability to conduct a Russiagate had General Flynn stayed in the job as National Security Advisor. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. That's a big revelation maybe for many in your audience. I've talked about that in other places, but that's a huge thing, because as the National Security Advisor, all of the nonsense that came through the White House would have all come through me. And I would have, the discovery of the spying, because we already knew that we were going to be looking at the alleged, now known spying on the Trump campaign during 2016. I mean, they were spying, and also the lies from people like John Brennan at the CIA, the paid-for dossier by Hillary Clinton. I mean, all of these things happened. And so now let's fast forward to today, because I know that there's some things that you want to talk about that are maybe more current. But all of these things are data points, Stephen, that we need to not discount. Russiagate occurred, or the impeachment gates, right? Those things happened, and they didn't work to the level that the left, this communist left takeover of our country, they didn't work to the level that they wanted. Okay. So when they didn't like crush my soul, right? When they weren't able to get Donald Trump to resign, because they wanted me out, and they wanted Trump to resign within 90 days. Okay. So these are things that people don't think about. There was a lot of pressure. Remember the 25th Amendment deal, and Rosenstein and McCabe, and they were all talking about this stuff in like the first 90 days of the first term that Trump was there. All these things happened. Trump was able to withstand those body blows, but not without some damage. And now that data point, those data points of Russiagate, now it's all of these 90 whatever felony counts that he's got, these indictments, these places for 4 courts he's dealing with. This is a continuation of that. Okay. And the more that Mike Flynn can be attacked online, which I get constantly attacked online, the moveon.org, and I think this organization that Elon Musk, I think, is suing today. There's various organizations that are put together solely to go after those of us that have basically a trusted voice within the American community, right? Particularly in the conservative or the mega community. And mega and America First are not, America First is not a bumper sticker that Donald Trump came up with. That's been around a long time. Make America Great Again is the stamp that he is still trying to put on America. And if we don't get to that stage, if we don't have him for at least another term, and he's got to be thinking really clearly about not just the next 4 years, and he's got to be thinking about 12 years, and that 12 years means 4 years of him, and then whoever he chooses to be his vice president going forward, because we have got to get the reins back from this communist movement in this country that has people, yelling from the river to the sea, right now all over college campuses, all over cities. They're taking down statues again. They're kicking in doors of federal buildings. They're blocking bridges. They're blocking routes. They're beating people up. We have a case of a murder out in or certainly a manslaughter out in, I think it's California, last week. I mean, this is at the crazy level, and it's crescendoing. And I'll get off my horse here, Stephen, to get to another question, but there's a crescendo effect that is happening in this country because the people of this country, we are fed up. We are absolutely fed up, and enough is enough. And so, your question about why me, that tells you a lot about the background of why me. There are things that I know that I would have never allowed to happen had I stayed in that job, and they knew it. And it's not just the Obama administration. It's this uniparty that exists around Washington, D.C., and they're like big fat ticks just sucking the lifeblood out of the American taxpayer to their benefit. I mean, to their benefit. Absolutely. Don't think that there's, I only know literally it's probably this many. I'm holding up my hand, one hand, probably that many that are in Congress, both the House and the Senate, never mind, the executive branch and the judiciary, that are in Washington, D.C., that the American taxpayer can trust. There are entire bodies of representatives from entire states that I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them, and most of them you can't, because they're all they're fat from the amount of money that they stuff into their pockets.
Yeah. Oh, those gold bars in your suit pockets and your closets weighing you down.
Yeah, and that's just one U.S. senator, right? I mean, that's right.
Yeah,
I mean, and one other piece on that particular case, he was not just taking money; he was giving secrets. So he's giving secrets. Apparently, he's giving secrets to the Egyptian government. I mean, so we cannot survive as a nation if we allow this level of corruption to continue, and that's why I'm like, I'm very excited about what I see in places like Argentina, a communist country for 100 years, and Milei, he wins the presidential election the other day. This is one of these sort of signs, right? These are one of these signs that I look for. And what's interesting about Argentina is they have paper ballots, same day voting, and they count that day. They don't do any of this machines, none of that stuff. So, I mean, it tells you if the mood of the country is where they're done with communism and they want to go to a more of a conservatism, even though he's the liberal party head. Their definition of liberal is much different than ours. He sort of aligns. He's sort of an Argentinian first type president, but that's a sign, or he is a symbol of a lot of different things that are going on in the country here and going on in the United States of America. And Argentina, in the days when it was one of the top countries in the world, which is only 100 years ago, which is not that far. I want people to understand that 100 years ago is not that far back. And in 100 years, we've seen the rise of Stalin, Hitler, Mao Zedong, Pol Pot. I mean, those four alone murdered over 100 million of their own citizens because they transitioned from what did occur, from what type of government they did have. They transitioned to basically communist or fascism or some other dictatorship where the people of the country became slaves. And so for people in this country to think that, it would never happen here, or this is politics as usual. I don't like Donald Trump because of, the way he talks or his tweets, tough. We're in a time now in our country where we're going to lose the ability, we're going to lose our precious freedoms that millions have sacrificed for over many, many decades. And of course, I think it's 247 years now of our existence. We could lose everything in a very, very short period of time. Just Just ask the Athenians or the Romans or the Mesopotamians, or you name the empire that no longer exists, right? The American empire exists now because we still have, at the center of who we are, we still have a very strong faith in our Judeo-Christian principles and values, period. That's what we were built upon, and people can argue with me about that, but, I love that debate.
Yeah. So one thing that I want to hear from you is, do you think that we are being led through, I don't know if you would call it like a psyop or just a massive mind twist, but when it comes to the January 6th Capitol breach situation, we are now finding out the FBI was involved. We're finding out that people like Yogananda Pittman withheld security briefings, that the chief of the police sunned. He wasn't even aware of the groups that were coming in that they knew were going to do violent acts. President Trump's National Guard offer is rejected. Are we being lied to? Because now there's new footage coming out that is, I'm just seeing that the January 6th committee, they used a narrative and cherry picking of testimony and video footage to tell this story through ABC News, CBS News, MSNBC. And are we just being lied to?
Yeah. So the answer is yes. And there's two things that the communist movement in this country do very well. They project, which means they basically project what they do on us. Those of us that are, let's just say, conservatives or pro-America, they project on us what they are doing, okay? And they lie. They lie through their teeth. And they also repeat it. The repetition in projection is something that is, it's really, when you talk about psychological operations in warfare, one of the things that you do, and frankly, Hollywood's really good at it, they're very effective at it, is this idea about repetition. A really good media outlet will repeat something constantly. And when they repeat it, it begins to sink in. And some portion of the American psyche starts to believe it. They start to believe that, like some of the stupid things that we were talking about, in the beginning, and some of these crazy psychological operations that have been affected and effective, in a very masterful way, because they've apparently worked with so many people. But yeah, so repetition and projection about January 6th from the quote unquote, the committee that Nancy Pelosi set up with two of the loser uniparty members in Kinzinger and Cheney. And now what we know? Now, let me just take a step back, Stephen, though, and drop something else in here. Why did it take Speaker Johnson, Speaker of the House Johnson? So we wasted a year, actually probably more than that, but we wasted a year waiting to get rid of a guy by the name of Speaker McCarthy, right? Speaker of the House McCarthy. Why didn't he release it? He only released a small portion to Fox, and then Fox held on to it. Frankly, Fox got rid of Tucker Carlson because Tucker started to pull out the tapes and he was showing what was happening while Nancy Pelosi's, while they were still coming to grips with all that sort of stuff. So it's taken us a year to get here. Better late than never. It tells you a lot about McCarthy as Speaker of the House. So it's a good thing he's gone. Speaker Johnson, he kept his promise on this one. And so now all these tapes are out there. And what is very, very clear, if you watched Clay Higgins from Louisiana the other day, and the testimony that he had from Christopher Wray, I think it was this past Wednesday, where he basically shows these white buses in Union Station, right? These white unmarked buses in Union Station, where there was a muster of what appeared to be a bunch of what they call confidential human sources from the FBI, all dressed up in their military regalia at about 6 o'clock in the morning on January 6th. So they had to have been prepared and trained prior to the 6th. So if we knew that this was going to happen, Trump authorized the National Guard like a week prior, and then the day prior, the mayor of Bowser from Washington D.C., she turns it down. I would like to see the text messages for that decision between her her and people like Pelosi or others. There's so much that this weaponization committee needs to be looking for. But you know, at the end of the day, we're running out of time. So they're going to have to be really, really precise. Now I'm talking about the weaponization committee that's chaired by Jim Jordan. You know, Jim Jordan, I think, is fine, but Jim Jordan is another one who frankly, he needs to get off of Fox News and he needs to start getting back to work. These guys are all on vacation right now, Stephen, by the way. Okay, by the way. So whenever you show this, the whole of Congress, they're on vacation. They're back home for Thanksgiving right now. I mean, that just to me is just total bullshit. I mean, our country is on fire. We are being built back better in the image of a bunch of globalist elite communists that are running our country, because Joe Biden is definitely not in charge. The guy can't get up 3 flights. He can't get up 3 sets of stairs. He can't finish a sentence. He can't even give a toast. You know, I mean, it's amazing that we are looking at something that just seems so surreal. But this is why I keep going back to this word uniparty, right? There is a uniparty in Washington, D.C. And we have this thing called the Weaponization Subcommittee that's part of the House Judiciary Committee. Chairman Jordan is the chairman of that committee as well. So we should be bringing in, they should have already brought in, this is where McCarthy is just such a loser. We should have been bringing in a year ago, everybody. I mean, they should have been bringing in Obama, Hillary, Brennan, Clapper, Comey, McCabe, all of them, Susan Rice. Bring every single one, put them under subpoena, and just the first month that Nancy Pelosi was Speaker of the House at the beginning in 2021, she had 500 subpoenas out. Okay, I'm not sure we've had any subpoenas out, you know, other than just recently. They had over 500. I was one of those subpoenas to go in front of the January 6th, this subcommittee, right? And now we know with all of the tapes, with everything that we're seeing, that it was a repetitive, a projected lie against the American people to tell a narrative so they could go after Donald Trump, okay? So they could go after President Donald J. Trump. I mean, this is unprecedented in the United States of America's history. This has never happened. So anybody that says anything, any American that says anything like, well, this or that, this has never happened in our country. Our country has never been here before. Yes, we have been through a Revolutionary War. Yes, we have been through a Civil War. Yes, we have been through world wars with, you know, in Europe and in the Atlantic and in Europe and then in the Pacific and in Japan and China. We've been through world wars. We've been through the Vietnam War. We've been through these brush fire wars. We've been through these wars against terror in Afghanistan and Iraq. But you know what? We've never been here before. We have never, ever been in the place we've been in ever before, because we have in Washington, D.C., holding the levers of power, meaning the Department of Justice, Department of Defense, and people don't know, a lot of people don't know, the FBI works for the Department of Justice. So the boss of Garland, the boss of Wray is Garland, and the boss of both of them is Biden, right? So we've never been in this place before, Stephen. And I want people to understand that in order for us to rise out of this, it doesn't take a lot. It really doesn't take a lot. And let me just give you one example, okay? I watched this latest round of elections, okay, Stephen, this past week. And one of the states that I paid very close attention to was Kentucky, because I'm thinking, geez, the guy in Kentucky would be great if we had a Republican win the state of Kentucky for the governorship. Well, the guy didn't win, but a couple of days prior, he was up by like 17, 18 points in some very legitimate local polls. So you're thinking, okay, this guy's going to win. This guy's going to win. And now the Republican Party run by Ronna McDaniel right now, she should be booted out, not just resign. She'll tell you, well, we weren't effective on the abortion issue. They're going to try to pin it on one issue. Now, I do know that a lot of people vote on single issue, things like that, particularly abortion. But that's not the problem. So you had 2 cities in Kentucky, Lexington and Louisville. And the voter turnout by the Democrat Party, in Lexington and Louisville was 70% turnout. The Democrats was somewhere between, or the Republicans were somewhere between 35 and 38% for each city. So those are the two major cities. If you win those cities, you're going to win the governorship. And that's what happened. So voter turnout across the state of Kentucky was just under 40%. But in those two cities, the Democrats outvoted Republicans 2-1. And when you have those kinds of numbers coming out to vote, and I don't know whether they're paying them or what, but they're doing something right, and the Republicans are on their ass, and they're doing something wrong. That, to me, is an indicator of why we need to have new leadership in the Republican Party. And I'm not just talking about at the RNC level, but in a lot of these states, all of these states that had losing efforts, the GOP chairs in those states ought to be booted out as well. Because we need winners right now. We need winners. We need people who are going to fight to win the battles that we are going to have this coming year when it comes to the political races. And everybody knows it's a blood sport. They call it a blood sport for a reason. It is an ugly thing. Sadly, we have gotten to this point in our country. But if people that can vote decide and say something like, well, I'm going to wait till the general election, Stephen. I don't vote in primaries. You know what then? What you're going to end up in the general election is one of these bums that continue to get voted into office because they can, and they've been there for 20, 30, 40, in the case of Biden, 50 years. Okay? If we continue down this path, Stephen, then we have nobody else to blame but ourselves for our complacency and our laziness and our lack of interest, and we just can't have that. I know that there's too many people that have sacrificed their lives for us to be able to have this conversation, for us to be able to vote. And I know that there's a lot of moms out there. There's a lot of women out there fighting right now. Moms for America, I'm a big fan of. There's a couple of other organizations. There's the Audit the Vote, depending on the state, Audit the Vote PA or Audit the Vote New York. There's these different organizations, the precinctstrategy.com, precinct strategy, that Steve Stern is a big proponent of. And, and we have other efforts that I'm directly involved in. I'm actually directly involved in those that I just mentioned, as well as many others, because we have to get people, champions, I call them, Stephen. We have to have champions in this country stand up and basically stand against the utter nonsense, the sheer nonsense that we are being bombarded by from the media or from the trolls that exist in social media that are trying to attack those of us that are standing up for America first principles and values. I mean, this is it. This is it. The fact of life, and I'll shut up after this, and if you have any other questions, I'll answer any more questions maybe. But the fact of life of any nation state in the history of the world, and anybody can challenge me on this, is that nation states rise and fall. Empires rise and they fall, right? So one of the oldest that we know of is called the Byzantine Empire. And then I mentioned a couple in another one of my diatribes here earlier in the show. Athens, Athenian Empire, right? Mesopotamian Empire, Carthaginian Empire, the British Empire. The sun never sets on the British Empire. Well, now it does. They barely get a sunrise and a sunset, on the island of England right now. I mean, so the Roman Empire, right? The Ottoman Empire, just so happens, it's funny. I'll just take 30 seconds on the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire is the longest surviving empire in the history of the world. Ottomans, right? This was run by Islam and the Muslims, right? Ottoman Empire. They go look it up. They were the longest surviving empire in the history of the world. And the only three things that you could be: you could either convert to their religion, you were turned into a slave, or you were killed. Those are the three choices that you had, right? So now look at what's happening right here on the streets of America, right? And I'm not anti-Muslim. I am anti-radical Islamist, believe me. And I have dealt with that. And I don't mind debating anybody on that issue because of my life experiences, the privilege that I had serving in our armed forces and fighting overseas and understanding the culture, the history, the ideology, the demographics of these nations that we are now engaged in and engaged with again. But the problem is, Stephen, is that they're right here in the United States of America and not just over, on the Gaza Strip, right? Where we still have, I think, 40 Americans killed in action, and we have some number, it's a couple hundred Americans that are being held hostages. Never mind the Israelis that were murdered, raped I mean, brutally chopped up in some cases, babies. You know, they're still holding hostages from the age from I think it's 3 to 87. It's insane. This is insane. So anyway, that's kind of how I feel here today talking to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. We've got just a few minutes left, so maybe I could do like a lightning round with quick question, quick answer. Why would Joe Biden, while he's vice president, need multiple fake and illegal names and emails in order to send 82,000 pages worth of emails?
Yeah, because they hide these political people at these levels. You know, we know that Romney had one. We know that Obama had one. They do it to hide. They do it to deceive. Hillary Clinton had one. Bill Clinton had one. They do it to lie. Okay, they do it to protect things that they know are wrong. That's why.
Okay. Why would
and one other thing on that, they're doing it on government capabilities. Okay, so they're doing it on government capabilities and on government time using false names to basically deceive the American people.
Yeah. The Pentagon just failed another audit where they openly admitted they cannot find $3 trillion worth of U.S. taxpayer money. Any idea where this money's going? Is it just unaccounted for? Is it being money laundered through foreign wars?
Yeah, all the above. Okay, so the fact that the Department of Defense can't pass an audit, you know, so now what you have to do, and this is not one I can when you talk about lightning round, but I'll just capture it in like this. So what has to happen is the Department of Defense, that audit has to be broken down into chunks. And what you have to do is you have to prioritize which chunks you are going to audit first, right? And I did some of this when I was at DIA in a smaller sense, right? It's an agency it's a large agency, but an agency within inside of the Department of Defense. So you got to prioritize which chunks you're going to audit. You then begin the audit. And guess what, Stephen? What you do if you find nefarious activities by people inside of that component of it, you hold them accountable. And trust me, you will start to see the rats scramble. You'll start to see all the bugs running all over the place, and people will then rise up and within those organizations, and you'll hear more from people that are whistleblowers, because there is money that's being siphoned out of the Pentagon for things that many, many people don't even realize. And when you're talking about $3 trillion, I mean, that's more money than the next 10 countries, the next 10 top 10 economies in the world combined their defense spending times probably 5. I mean, it's just an unfathomable amount of money that most people don't even understand. They go, oh, the Pentagon, they can't find $3 trillion. And we laugh about it. This is nothing to laugh about. This is our national security. It's our nation's defense, and it's the leadership. This goes back to Rumsfeld, right? I mean, and it goes actually back even before that. So this is not just a problem with this administration, with a Democrat, installed administration. This is a problem with how the Pentagon operates and functions, and how the uniparty in Washington, D.C. functions. Most people don't even read the damn spending bills or the armed services bills that get passed. I mean, most people don't even read them. They just pass, and people just figure, again, it's like if the American people don't get involved in politics, then we have nothing to complain about.
Yeah. Final question. I know that you need to jump here. A lot of conservatives worry that we're being invaded at the southern border. Is this on purpose, or is this incompetence at the White House level?
It's totally on purpose. This is intentionally designed, open border situation where, if you go back and you read I forget the exact title of it, but it was a meeting between Trudeau and Obrador out of Mexico that they had over a year ago, where they talked about kind of a Northern America open borders, system of government. This is part of the globalist effort, right? So the open borders are absolutely intentional. What is happening, and we're going to see over this Thanksgiving period. So you know, as we are all trying to, you know, not eat too much turkey and apple pie here, you know, there's probably going to be about another couple of 100,000, maybe another 500,000, because they're waiting on the border right now in a couple of places that I'm aware of, and they're just going to cross into this country. So we're looking at about 10 million people over the last 2 years alone that have illegally invaded our country. We're looking at, you know, a death toll of somewhere between 100 and 200,000 killed in action just by Chinese introduced fentanyl, right? Through these Mexican cartels and through organizations like MS-13 and other of these Gulf cartel criminal elements on our streets in America. So this is intentional. This is intentional. There's no way in the world that this is due to incompetence. Nobody's this stupid, right? So, and all you got to do is go listen to the hearings that they have with Mayorkas. And then we have what? We have 8 members of the Uniparty that won't help to impeach Mayorkas. And this is not just about impeaching Mayorkas. That's not going to change the situation. This is about security of the United States of America. And again, it's like everybody sees this. This country sees it. You know, people on all sides of all the aisles see what's happening because it is affecting every single one of us. It's affecting our hospitals, our schools, our streets, crime, every aspect of our lives. And so this is not incompetence. This is intentional. It's going to continue. We probably, if we go one more year of this, Stephen, you know, I'm not sure that will be recoverable. And as my friend Tom Homan, you know, who's a great patriot, says, you know, we get Donald Trump back in office, this will be, you know, within the first 90 days, probably the greatest deportation of humans in the history of the world, because we cannot sustain the illegals that are living and operating on U.S. soil right now without something breaking really badly. So anyway.
Yeah. General Michael Flynn, thank you so much for coming on. I know how busy you are. I appreciate your voice. I appreciate your service to our country. I'm going to leave a link to your book down below. How can people follow you? What's the best way to stay in touch?
Yeah, I mean, I have these 2 books out right now. I actually have written 5 over the last couple of years. They can go to generalflynn.com, and take a look at all the things that I do. I have newsletters on there. You can subscribe to different parts of what I'm doing, and you can clearly help me out by purchasing these books. Everything that I talked about today, you can find in the Citizen's Guide to 5th Generation Warfare in greater detail, or the Citizen's Guide to 5th Generation Warfare, How to Fight Artificial Intelligence. These are book 1 and book 2. We're about to come out with a 3rd book here in another few months that has to do with religious warfare, which is another component of what we're facing right now globally. So this is just to help people, teach people how to understand what it is that we're up against in this sort of era of history that we are currently facing. So Stephen's been great. Thank you for your patience to get me on your show. And you got a great show. You got a great audience. I watch you as much as I can. I certainly see clips from friends that do go on your show. So thanks very much for being persistent and getting me on.
Great. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day. I'll put that link down below.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. See ya.
Bye.